replicate elsewhere. COVID happened. Things got a little bit squirrely, well, to say the least. If you were trying to pump out iPhones and everything.
A year ago today, I built this little chunk of rainforest. This is much more than a bedside tank. It has evolved into a dense ecosystem teeming with life. It is in this video where you can see both the brutality and beauty of Mother Nature. Today, I will unveil to you the full history of the cannibal jungle in my bedroom. The tank began as a summer project. I built a custom background for the tank using some ghost wood, spray foam, and silicone. Nothing major. The tank wouldn't be the same without it. I built up some lava rock in the foreground.
Out of charges. Time to jump.
B.
Going B.
One enemy remaining.
Spikes B.
This was to create the water area. The back of the tank was then filled with some leca and substrate. From here, I planted the tank and it was complete. I didn't realize I had created the groundwork for an ecosystem. At the time, the only animals were these tiny garden snails that hitched along one of the
Cutting through. Cutting through.
Spike planted.
the plant. As time went by, the plant started to grow in and moss began to appear. The progression of the tank was slow, but clearly evident. Once mold appeared, I introduced various species of springtails into the tank. They thrived in the humid environment. I felt the tank was ready for a more complex life, so I got some shrimp and Malaysian trumpet snails. The shrimp were shy, but would always come out during feeding time. As for the snails, they settled in right away. Within just a few days, I found baby snails scattered throughout. To make the shrimp feel more at home, I added in some red root floater. These plants acted as cover and made the shrimp feel secure. After that,
You're going to scatter from my stuff. Super easy to pick off. Gotta go.
हेलो गाइस आवाज आ रही है
Time to jump.
अच्छा, नहीं आ रही ओके
Yeah.
Spike down A.
Time to jump.
down A. Last player standing.
It didn't take long for the shrimp to get busy. Here, you can see a very pregnant shrimp. She carries the eggs under her abdomen, and those tiny black dots are actually
Spike down
eyes.
A.
There was a population boom, and you can clearly see that in the time lapse. About a month down the road, everything was still going smoothly, so I was ready to add in an apex predator, the vampire crab. Their eyes glow a menacing yellow, which is how they get their name.
Guys, आवाज आ रही है?
Cutting through. Decoy. Fake teleport. Cutting through.
सही सही चारों को लेगा चारों
Fake teleport.
Last player standing. One enemy remaining. Spike planted.
Started with only 6 of them. When I added them to the tank, little did I know of the army they would become. I gave them each a mealworm to feed upon. This crab eats his food like a cup of takeout. I always thought it.
Stop them, please.
Cutting through. Yeah.
Watch out! Take this! I'm out of here!
Reloading. Spike down B.
Time to jump.
Last player standing.
Gun here.
Spike planted.
Fake teleport. Gun here.
It was funny. These crabs are semi-terrestrial, meaning they need both a land and water area to survive. On land, they breathe using a thin layer of water on their shell. If you look closely, you can see the water moving around their exoskeleton. This
Cutting through.
Spike down A.
Spikes here. Fake teleport. Time to jump.
One enemy remaining.
one is even blowing bubbles. The crabs often venture to the water in search of a meal. They tried to hunt the shrimp, but aren't very successful. 2 months later, the tank was still thriving. The plants finally...
उधर से जड़ लेना राइट ओ ये अच्छा अच्छा
Charge and shoot. Easy enough.
ये ट्रेड करेगा क्या इसके लिए
Yeah.
started to fill in the space, and some of them developed crazy colors. One day, I was baffled in the space. 2 months later, the tank was still thriving. The plants finally started to fill in the space, and some of them developed crazy colors. One day, I was baffled when I found baby crabs wandering around the tank. They weren't much bigger than a sesame seed. The babies had very effective camouflage as they...
Fire in there.
Time to jump.
Spike down B.
Nice.
One enemy remaining.
लास्ट है वो 2B
They are the harder they get. Gone here. Their lives are so meaningless.
Got here.
blended right into their surroundings.
Yeah,
Here,
what did
you
you
can
do?
see him eating some
What
algae.
did you do?
The babies were an awesome surprise, though I became concerned. I feared the crabs would overpopulate and there would be way too many of them.
Cutting through. Fake teleport. Time to jump. I'll handle this. Here.
Welcome to my world.
I'm back.
One enemy remaining.
Okay, I only have like 78 grenades left.
I needed a solution. I needed a new predator. That is where the morning gecko comes in. I bought 3 adult females and I thought they would be the perfect tank mate. The geckos immediately took up residence in the canopy. The adult crabs were too big for them to hunt, but the babies, well,
Cutting through.
हंड्रेड है वो 100 है मार के वैंडल ले लेना वो वाली प्लीज रहना
babies could become an unfortunate meal. Now, it wasn't only geckos that were hunting the baby crabs. The crabs hunted the crabs. Here, you can see a baby crab eating his own brother. They were cannibals. It showed how brutal nature can be. As more time passed, the forest
player
floor
standing.
became much more than just a pile of dead leaves. It became a refuge. There were still these tiny snails who would wander in search of food. More than just microfauna lived here. It was home to the baby crabs. They rarely ventured out to explore or to become someone
Spike
else's
down
meal.
A.
As the crabs grew, they no longer needed the security of the forest floor. They could climb into the canopy in search of food. At this stage, they were too big to become a meal for one of the geckos. I'd even see them peacefully sitting side by side. In the canopy, the crabs found refuge in the bromeliads. These plants hold mini pools of water in their leaves, which turned out to be a perfect...
Time to jump. Just try and get past me. Yeah. Cutting through.
A. One
Big
enemy
hiding
remaining.
spot. I'd often find them hiding in these pockets. If I ever got too close, they would quickly dive deeper into the plant. The geckos also call the bromeliads home. I'd find them tucked in between their leaves and they'd find shelter here when it rains. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the tank has rain. The tank has these tropical storms 5 times a day. The heavy rain brings out the geckos and you can even hear them talking to each other. That clicking noise is actually the geckos communicating. They are very social animals.
Their pulse quickening from here.
Need a drop. Lamat, thanks.
I need a drop.
Ace.
Thanks.
Love you. Love you, Rana. ये ले Rana तुझे skill. ये ले Rana.
Embarrass them.
Yeah. Time to jump.
Animals that like to be housed in groups. Well, their group is about to get bigger because they had laid piles and piles of eggs. This may come as a surprise because if you recall, all the geckos I bought were female. Then how do they reproduce? Well, this isn't just any ordinary gecko. This type of gecko can make clones. All you need is one gecko to start an entire population. As the days went by, I began to find baby geckos all over the tank. They were extremely quick and difficult to film. Most of the time, I would find them resting among the bromeliads or high up in the canopy. This little guy was drinking off one of the leaves. Funny little guys for sure. And now, this brings
Cutting through. Can't use that. Can't use that.
Flash.
Last player standing.
Ult है तेरे पास. Ult कर दे. Last one.
Welcome to my world.
Spike planted.
us to present day. Like my hair, the tank looks nothing like it did a year ago and has become overgrown. The diversity in leaf shape, size, and color is extremely variable. The ecosystem has finally found balance where no animal outcompetes the other. Many of the crabs have reached adulthood. Here, you can see a baby, juvenile, and adult crab in the palm of my hand. The smallest crab doesn't have any of his adult coloration yet. Right now, he's cleaning his eyes with his claws. They are like mini windshield wipers because the crabs don't have any eyelids. They have to manually keep their eyes clean. You can see how the juvenile crab has developed some color on his eye.
Keep hitting them. Time to jump. Gun here.
There. One enemy remaining. Spike down B.
Could never hope to match up. Reloading.
You won't be serious? You've got it.
No.
No. No. Here.
I eyes, and they're now a deep orange. I decided to give him a little treat, and this is a bloodworm. He took it right out of my tongs and began to eat it. His mouth was like a little meat grinder, and he ate the entire thing.
Let's start this party.
Yeah.
Enemy spotted B.
Last player standing.
जा 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 दोनों लो बहुत लो दोनों बहुत लो
And here's an adult crab. He is clearly the biggest and most colorful of the three. His massive claws were disproportionate to his tiny frame. Bloodworm and were so I built them their own setup. I'll be sure to make a video on them in the future. The tank as a whole is definitely looking at its best. Beauty lies in its constant evolution and change. Every day, there is new growth, a new plant, or even a new generation. This tank is not the only project I've been working on. Right now, I'm building a 100-gallon polydarium, a saltwater ecosystem, and I'm keeping a colony of wasps. So definitely stay on the lookout for that. Now, here's a full playlist of all the videos I have on this tank. Feel free to check that out. Thank you for
Vandal skin anyone? We got her.
I need a drop.
Cheers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah.
Spike
100
down B.
It is 100.
One enemy remaining.
वो ये पे रहना वो ये पे है वो आवाज आ रहा है रहना ये पे है रहना वो ये पे है
Player standing.
वो टीपी करेगा
I have the sight.
This is a common blowfly, and that, well, was a spiny flower mantis. In today's video, we're going to build her an awesome nanotank with a whole ecosystem. Whether it's plants, animals, whatever, we're about to watch her grow. About a month ago, I got a package in the mail. I knew what it was, but I wasn't exactly thrilled. It was delayed for a week despite ordering overnight shipping. Now, USPS and FedEx are on my bad side. It was a blessing that the animals arrived in perfect condition. So they came in these deli cups and were super small. As babies, they seem to imitate ants. That would explain their black coloration. This one, for instance, waves his arms to mimic ant antenna. Cool stuff for sure. I also got a fruit fly culture as a staple food source. Since I figured they'd be hungry right out of the box, I fed them. Now, I quickly learned that they turned supper time into a massacre. They did not hesitate to eat any fly I put in front of them.
You want to play? Let's play.
Enemy spotted there. Here we go. Enemy spotted. Enemy spotted A. Start move.
Cutting through.
Spike planted.
One enemy remaining.
Easy, man. There can only be 1-0.
Gun here.
Enemies nearby.
Match point.
We can all agree losing
need a
sucks.
drop.
Come on, let's win.
Them. When eating their prey, they seem to always start with the head. It's difficult to believe these guys are real. I don't know, but they just look so alien to me. Anyway, I upgraded their deli cups to these larger containers. The lids allow for proper ventilation, and the containers are just temporary. After adding them in, I left them alone overnight. The following day,
Yeah.
Time to jump. Can't use that. Can't use that. Decoy.
I got spike.
I came back to what looked like a dead mantis on the
Running
floor.
low.
I removed it from the container to take a closer look. I realized it wasn't a dead mantis at all, and just a molt. She had transformed. Much like lizards or snakes, and just a molt. She had transformed. Much like lizards or snakes, mantis shed their skin periodically so they can grow. This is called molting. There's a clear difference before and after it molted. It looks almost unrecognizable. With time and meal after meal after meal, the mantis grew quite substantially. I knew it was time to build them a proper setup. This beverage dispenser I found was going to be perfect. It had a simple lid, but I didn't like the faucet. I took it out, but now I had a hole in the bottom of the tank. This is an easy fix though. All I needed was some hot glue and a bottle cap. The bottle cap was then glued inside the container, creating a watertight seal. There are definitely better ways of doing this, but
Try not to die. Yeah. Don't mess with me. Gun here. Cutting through. I'll handle this.
Plant कर plant.
Spike down B. Last player standing.
अरे भाई
I'm back. Fake teleport. Can't use that. Can't use that. Time to jump. Fake. Out of charges.
Enemy remaining. Attackers win.
Call me when the world.
but it was the easiest for me. Next up, I filled the bottom of the jar with some Leeka. This will act as a false bottom where excess water will drain down into and eventually evaporate over time. I'm going to add a layer of weed fabric between the Leeka and substrate, so they don't mix together. Now, I just have to add in the dirt. I sloped it towards the back to give the tank a sense of depth. I'm now using an organic orchid potting mix, because the main star of the tank will be an orchid. Here in the dirt, down into with some Leeka. This will act as a false bottom where excess water will drain down into and eventually evaporate over time. I'm going to add a layer of weed fabric between the Leeka and substrate, so they don't mix together. Now, I just have to add in the dirt. I sloped it towards the back to give the tank a sense of depth. I'm now using an organic orchid potting mix, because the main star of the tank will be an orchid. Here are my options. All three plants were beautiful, but only one would fit in the terrarium. Each of them looked so exotic and unique. I had trouble narrowing it down. I settled on the middle one, because I thought it was kind of a mix between them all. To clarify, I didn't use this plant alone. I had a handful of others I bought at a local nursery. I removed the dirt from each of the plants and thoroughly rinsed them off. I wanted to remove as many possible pesticides as I could. I ended up with this plant selection. I chose these plants because they all had leaves that contrasted nicely with each other. Now, actually planting the tank wasn't very complicated. Basically, I placed the plants wherever I find they look nice. The tank looked a little bare, so I gathered some moss. I picked some up from the woods behind my house, and I made sure to sterilize it. You could find all kinds of things in wild moss, so stay on the lookout. I added in some moss that I already had quarantined for well over a month. It instantly livened up the setup and really brought everything together. I also quickly modified the lid to house an LED light. I began by drilling a hole for the cord, and then I glued on the light. I also took some brown